long was he in jail for?
We were probably
Right. Over?
It was on my screen.
All right. So thanks for sharing those thoughts. It seems like a big thing on a lot of people's mind right now is, what do I do if I have a lab that like space in my school even that doesn't have a lot of resources? And so I think that that's something that we were not covering in this session, but I think as you guys go out to do some group work time later, I have some resources on that about, like, not every single lab has to be this like grandiose thing, to Rick's point about, like, sometimes it's just about explaining a concept deeper for kids. And so I have some resources, and Kelly even just put one in the chat box about how do you do labs with low budget or with lack of resources. So objectives for tonight's session, hopefully by the time you leave at 7:30 or before then, you will leave with some principles about designing or revising the lab activities or just types of activities you're doing in your class to meet those ideal purposes that some of you just described. And then the last objective for tonight is thinking about how do we get students to actually create new knowledge as opposed to just confirming, like I said, what we've already taught them. So again, I know this is not your favorite thing because you've made some strong feelings about this house before, but our next session that we do in 2 weeks will actually be explicitly focused on culture of achievement. So we're taking a step back from all of the content stuff and really focusing in on how is our classroom culture going. Let's take a pulse on that, and let's adjust course. Thinking about where tonight fits into this right here, really thinking about how do we invest students in the purpose of labs. And then the second piece that I've heard from a lot of people is, how do I actually manage labs? Like, I think Vanessa was talking about this, is that, like, right now it just doesn't feel like students can handle, like, all these different directions and different places that they need to be going. So, two different types of labs that we have seen in classrooms that we see all different times. We have traditional labs. These are the labs that I know that I did a lot when I was in school, where a teacher would just give us a procedure sheet and say, go do this for 50 minutes, and then turn it in at the end, like, with your little worksheet. And that's awesome, right? Like, there's a purpose for both of these. Like, that is not my aim tonight to say that one is better or one is, like, the only one that you should do. But the second type that I think we don't often talk about how to actually do are these inquiry-based labs. So we'd love for you guys right now, just based on, like, these two words and what you already know, because you all have lots of knowledge about science education, in the chat box, type really quick, what do you think the difference might be between these two different types of labs? So it looks like we have, like, a pretty good idea of what these two are, because I'm seeing lots of great thoughts, especially about, like, inquiry labs, and you guys have great ideas about what sorts of student leadership each of these creates. Well, just because it's already up here. So again, like you guys have already pointed out, in traditional lab, students know some sort of results that they're supposed to be getting. And the focus really is on, can they follow a procedure to get to a certain result that the teacher has most likely designed or most likely has figured out that she or he wants students to get. Inquiry-based labs, I think somebody said this almost specifically, is that students don't yet know what those results should be. The focus is really on them gathering evidence and is more about the process that they go through in the lab versus the specific answer they get by the end. Okay, so on the next page of the Google Doc, down from where you guys just were, I want you guys to think about our personal experience lab activities and think about what that means for us in our own classrooms. So thinking about what types of labs that you had up while you were going through school, and then thinking about what have you already tried or what have you wanted to try, and the rest of these questions here, because I'm not going to keep reading to you. So those are on the next page of the Google Doc, and again, I'll put that link in the chat box again if that would be helpful for you all. 2 more minutes to finish up your thoughts, and then we will move on. Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of, in the Google Doc, a lot of people really pulling out, like, inquiry is where we want to get, but there might be some challenges right now. Like, 1, how do I plan for it? 2, management-wise, like, how do I make this happen? Are my students ready for this? Like, what are the steps I can take them from where they're at now to really getting them to doing this independent type of problem solving? And I think we're going to address most of those throughout tonight. Especially the management one will be at the end, is just thinking about what works for some people, how can we problem solve around that, because we know that is probably something on a lot of our minds. What we're going to get into right now is the how of how do we plan for these, how do we make them happen in our classrooms. So, so during the pre-work, you guys were able to look into some classrooms and how they go about doing these inquiry-based labs. And I had you guys look at separate parts, so the pre-lab, the during the lab, and then the actually post after the lab, what did students learn from it. And just like in an ELA classroom, if any of you have ELA teacher friends, or if you've just been in an ELA classroom, they do pre, during, and post reading. So it's very similar to that. In the pre-reading, teachers work to figure out what do students already know about this topic, what are they bringing that is going to enhance their learning and enhance the class's learning, and also knowing what sorts of like misconceptions do students already have that we have to be able to fix in our instruction, and then actually doing that lab in our classroom, and then figuring out at the end, how do we get some sort of class-wide model or some sort of class-wide explanation and students to make sense of what they just learned. Cool. So you have looked at this already, hopefully. I know a lot of you have, so if you haven't had a chance, I'm sure there are some people in your groups that can tell you all about it, and you'll get a chance to look at those resources again. Knowing that we all interpret things differently, we're going to take about 20 minutes and figure out what did each of us take from that pre-work, from those different videos. How can we adapt those strategies that those teachers were using into our own classrooms? And so what I'm going to do right now is break off into a conference call line, and it's the same groups you've been working in whole evening and last week as well. So once I have finished, you are going to call these numbers and your access code here. I may pop in just to listen, so don't be freaked out by that. I will try and make it as not awkward as possible. But here are the questions I would love for you to discuss, and then I'm going to come back to this slide, obviously, for logistics. Just thinking about how is this planning similar to or different from how you're already planning labs? What benefits do you see to the approach that these teachers were using with their students? And then what are some teaching strategies that you can take from this that you'd want to use in your classrooms? So these are the questions, but again, I'll put up the phone numbers and also post them in the chat box for all. So go ahead and I'll put up on the screen when it's time to come back. We will come together at 7:55 if you just want to know the end of this part of the session. So I will hear you all soon and talk to you back on the WebEx in 20 minutes.
go to the
Well, thanks, Cree and Allie, for starting us back. The rest of y'all, if you could wrap up your conversations on the phone and head back to the WebEx screen. Thanks, Kelly and Chelsea and Jeff. Do you want to tell us about your Sudoku idea, or is Lucas just playing with you and us? Video of Lucas's Rutherford. I think he should talk to us all about it. It was impressive. Oh, yeah.
Long story short, I told my students that a special guest was coming all week. Told my students a special guest is coming all week. We're learning about atomic theory. And then on Thursday, I was like, all right, I'm going to go get them. So don't, destroy the room. And then I went outside. I put a mustache on and a coat and a tie. And I came back in with a British accent. And I was Ernest Rutherford. And I talked to them about the wonders of the Rutherford model. And
and like I said, I saw a video of it, so maybe for our next session, I'll try and get that video from Sam and show all of you, because it was quite wonderful. So as we went around to the group, there was a lot of collaborative problem solving going on, which is awesome. So I have a scenario question for you all. The next portion was really to go into partners like we've been doing and work on a specific lesson plan. And then after that, talk about management challenges and how to address those in the classroom. Option. I think there was already a lot of this partner problem solving going on already. And so if you would like to go into the problem solving with your partner, if you would type 1 into the chat box. If you would prefer to go straight into management problem solving, type a 2 into the chat box. And either way, we'll probably then end a little bit early to give you guys a reward for a really tough week. I know with homecoming and testing, it's not been the most fun. So again, if you want to go into partner time, again, breaking off into groups like we normally do, type a 1 in there. If you feel like you've had enough group time, okay, I'm seeing lots of 2s. Okay. Okay, if anybody, okay, we're going to go with 2. Sounds good to me. All right, so let's get 2 and 1. Oh, 2, okay. 1, Cree, Cree, then you can give us help that you would have talked to with your partner. Oh, no, okay, still 2s are winning out. So, thinking about what is tough about managing your classrooms while they're in the lab, or even managing classrooms during activity time period. I would love for people to share out either in the chat box or loud, what are the specific challenges that you're having with students, and then us as a group being able to problem solve with them. What are some solutions that we could work to make these less daunting and to fix that management issue? type into the PowerPoint as you all talk. Jeff or Rick, so this not reading instructions dependency piece seems to be a big one, and you all have like sort of insight into how labs or demonstrations have worked for you. I would love out loud if you could talk to us about what would you do with this problem if your students are not reading directions or like are just really dependent on you?
As far as the direction on the teacher thing, I have not found any solution for that. I still go into the lab, and since within 2 minutes of the lab starting, ask me how to complete step 10. I'll realize that step 9. I think that I've tried to create it before, but I don't think I'm clear enough to create a lab that actually won't work unless you follow all the steps, so they kind of just get stuck and then have to backtrack. But like I said, I'm still trying.
Thanks, Jeff. Rick, do you have any insight here that you'd love to share with us?
Agree and penalizing, because the lack of sometimes ability to understand instructions could be a comprehensional issue, a reading issue, because I noticed that some of my students have trouble reading, but are never going to admit it, particularly for the ones that are in high school. So I'm not a fan of penalizing anybody. I'm clear that they're just not doing it, or they're goofing around, and then it's more along the lines of, if you run time, you're not going to get the thing done, and that tends to get them back on track. But I'd be hesitant to automatically penalize somebody for not following instructions. You know for sure that they don't have a reading issue, and you should by now be able to discern which students have reading issues and which don't.
To go along with Rick, it's hard to not penalize students when you have an expectation of what they're supposed to be doing in the lab, though.
One thing that I use to kind of avoid that, my labs are always done in either pairs or groups, and if I know that I have a very low reading level student, I intentionally pair them with somebody who is at grade level or at least closer to grade level. Also, when you're planning your labs, or if you're taking labs from the internet, I have to go back and make my steps as simple as possible. I try to eliminate any of the complicated or possibly confusing language. So my labs, although they are high school labs, they would be easy to read for maybe a 4th or 5th grader. I do have a few students who are below 4th or 5th grade reading level, but back to the whole group, lab groups, to where somebody can kind of pick up the slack and help them.
I don't know, I have set time markers set in my lab, so if I walk by at like time marker 1 and you haven't met my expectations, that's when you'll get your first warning, right? And at time marker 1, I'll usually do it in the first. Then if they haven't met that expectation the first 10 minutes, we have a group discussion about like, you know, things to change or not meeting X, Y, and Z expectations. What'll happen if you continue not meeting it? And then if that's the first time that child has had an issue in a group, not meeting expectation of the second benchmark, I'll send it to another group. And if that's the second or third child's had an issue, they'll be assigned an alternate assignment, which goes over the same things as the lab, but is a much more independent process. So they leave group work, kind of. I seem to refocus themselves pretty well after that. I have had to break a few groups up permanently, and there are a few students who don't do labs anymore, but the rest of it's gone real well. And they just don't do labs.
Usually something out of a book in my back pocket that covers the same content, like literally a slip of paper with a list of bookwork problems on it. I have a strike rule in my lab, and my kids know this. You fool around, I give you one warning. If I so much have to look at you crosswise again, think you're acting up, you're doing bookwork. There's stuff in there that's dangerous, that's breakable, that's expensive. I literally say exactly that to them. You're in high school. You're going to learn to you're going to learn to act like the young adult you are. Well, you're not going to be doing lab work with us. You're going to be sitting in the corner doing bookwork. And I do not have a problem with that. Like, they're going to get the content. But we keep saying, oh, well, they don't quite know how to do this. They're never going to know how to do this. So, I don't know how to solve the dependency issue. And I wish I did. Ruby and I talked about doing a beginning of the year activity, like a quarter activity, where you literally gave the students a list of instructions, really simple instructions, like draw a circle, put a star inside the circle, but they handed them a sheet of instructions, said this is a test grade, you must do exactly what is on the paper, you can't mean anything, you cannot ask your classmates anything, you have to follow the instructions. Now you would want to watch out for kids who literally couldn't read them, but there's only, I've got a handful of kids who I know that would apply to. The rest of them, if I've had you read something, had self or another student read it out loud, modeled what I was doing while they were reading it out loud, and the next thing out of your mouth is, wait, what are we doing? It's not lack of reading skills anymore. It's mental engagement. Jeff,
Sorry, Lily, that text wasn't for you. Actually, responding to Rick's comment. I think that the idea that lab is goof on, I think you can get sense of value in the lab with your class. Make them realize that having labs is a privilege, and their ticket to getting out of sitting in a lecture is getting into the lab, and that lab can be taken away. I think that the kids or the students are way more likely to start behaving in lab as well as respecting the lab itself. I know we had an issue with kids fooling around with equipment, like Kelly said. I think the big thing was me tallying up how much our labs are actually worth. And we at Byhalia have a very well-stocked lab, and I rattle off some numbers about how much some things cost, and the kids start to appreciate not only the lab, but how much damage they could do if they were to fool around or use a piece of equipment wrong.
Well, Jeff, in fact, what you're saying basically is exactly my point. You just said exactly the view I take when you say that lab is a privilege. That by definition, sir, means that lecturing is almost a punishment. I'm not against labs, but I think labs are often used, I saw them this summer at Institute. I found them most to be game-oriented. You can use them. I think a lot of people use them as a crutch to avoid going into the classroom and actually teaching. Now, if you're saying something different, fine, but I'm more willing to look at this from a holistic point of view. Most labs are used to exemplify things that we teach in the classroom. Ergo, they're secondary to the lecture. But what you just said proves my point. It's a privilege. You're making them feel like they have something to lose if they're not behaving in an appropriate manner. But they're kids, and this is new and exciting to them, and so there has to be that concept built into it, and that's why I'm not a fan of punishment, because you're trying to kind of mandate that they act a certain way to get a benefit that you prescribe to them. you're taking away from the knowledge component. But, have at it any way you think is best. That's just my opinion.
I would support Jeff on this one because I feel like there are kids who I reach in a lab activity that I do not reach with the same content in a lecture, especially some of my higher achievers. When I have to teach a lecture, I've got to teach to the middle of the room. There are kids I had kids last year, one boy in particular I'm thinking of, who goof off because he was bored out of his mind. He had like a 99.9 in my class, but he was a behavior problem because he was bored out of his mind. The one time I got him on task, engaged, interested in truly learning was when we did labs. Like, there's a value. There are students who don't learn from hearing me talk, who get true value out of exploring this for themselves. I love it. I'm sure they are. I'm not as entertaining as you are. But I know my students are kids, but they're also not small children. They're high schoolers. And, I have set a clear expectation about how to behave in lab. I don't have a problem with holding them to that. I know they're excited. I'm not going to get on them for being excited. But if I set clear expectations, they're old enough to just know, follow them, and that if you don't, there are consequences for that. And I also I agree about the classroom labs. Most of my labs were in the classroom last year too. There we use our lab board just because my classes are bigger and we bump into each other if we try to stay in the classroom. But that can definitely be a thing that works. Something else we said in group that I thought might be helpful for some people is we talked about doing demos instead of labs. So if you want to be doing a lab activity and having your students think through it, but you feel like the management or the group work or whatever it is isn't there to be doing a lab fully with the kids doing it, ask them the same questions, but have you be the person who up in front of the room actually manipulates the materials and shows it to them. So they're still thinking about it, but you don't have to manage everybody doing it. Would also help with the supply issue.
Thank you so much. I think healthy debate is always good, and I think it makes me think a lot about what kind of work and how we need to think about our own design of labs. And in there, maybe that will come up as a course sometime. I did promise you guys we might get out a little bit early, so I want to stick to my promise because I don't like breaking them. So we're going to move straight into announcements. I think there's been a lot of just information shared tonight, and hopefully you have been able to take something from it and be able to try something new with your students, whether it be a demonstration, whether it be a full-on lab. So let me make this bigger so you guys can see. So we have talked before in this course active credit. And I'm going to go back over that with you really quick. If you don't remember what they are, this course plus next semester's course will give you a total of 14 credits. And you will need to get 6 elective credits from some other location, whether that be with your TLD coach or opportunities like I'm about to talk about right now. So on Monday evening, if you are interested in talking about time management, so how to balance everything that your district and school wants from you, everything that even Teach for America wants from you, and just being a human being. On Monday, Sarah Blackburn is going to lead a session about time management from 6 to 8 p.m., and it'll be a webinar just like this. If you want to register for that, you would go to the same site you do for your exit forms, except instead of exit form, you'll click on catalog and registration, their culture, and it will be right there. Our next session, so again in 2 weeks, will be a culture-based session. And in order to be able to engage with that, you need to administer your second round of culture surveys. If you're having trouble with that, let me know and we can talk. And then I will send you another survey tomorrow about a breakout group for that session. Lots of talking. I will send this all in follow-up if you are just tired right now, which I know most of you probably are. Shout out to Kelly, Chelsea, Jace, Cree, Joe, Lucas, Rick, and Nathan, who have already completed their first 9-week survey at noon today. So if you did it after that, you're still great. It just wasn't in the spreadsheet that I got. If you haven't had a chance, please check your email for a message from TFA National, which you should have gotten last Friday with the link directly to your survey. Cool. With that, complete your exit form in the same place that it always is. And in the last optional box, either give a shout out to somebody in here or let me know a topic you think, like we just got into talking at the end. What would you like to see in terms of elective PD for next quarter? And with that, before we leave, as Rick pointed out earlier, today there has been another there's another shooting in Oregon, and so would love, before we leave, if we could just take a moment of silence to think about those victims of that shooting. As we know, about 2 weeks ago we had one in our own community. So take a moment of silence before you leave and make sure to complete your exit ticket. Thank you all so much, and if you don't need anything else from me, I'll try and look through the chat box if there's any questions, and then if not, have a great night, and I will see you all soon.